yet another episode of The Tool Shed. One of the things that I have noticed over the years that is a motivation for builders to reach out to be able to get their business so they can not be on the tools. And it's not that they don't love it. It's just that they're finding when they get to a certain age, their body starts to give up on them. And the most common one is the back pain, and it really prevents people from being productive. But it also has all sorts of other implications as well, because when you're in pain all of the time, it affects you emotionally, it affects your decision making. There's lots of things that are affected when you're in physical pain. And the other day I was cruising around the interwebs and I found a chap by the name of Guy Onley, and he's got a company called The On-Site Coach. And Guy is a power lifter, and he teaches people how to look after themselves. Some self-care as far as the physical sides of things is concerned when we're lifting on site. So I just had to have a conversation with him because I think this is so important and it can make such a profound difference to the longevity of your business, but also how you feel about things. Because as I said, that physical pain can really impact how you think and your emotions. So looking after yourself is super, super important. So Guy, thank you so much for putting the time aside to jump on the podcast. Tell us how you got involved in powerlifting and coaching strongmen and the like. How bizarre.
Yeah. Oh, hey Mick, how you doing? How did I get into it? I think it was really a bit of a hobby. I've always been interested in health and fitness. My background was in roof tiling and scaffolding, so I've always been fairly active on site. And look, it's so important to take care of your body, isn't it? Like it's not with you forever, but you're stuck with it. So if you're not looking after it, it is going to break down sooner or later. So it was kind of a bit of a no-brainer for me to get into, because it was a lot of just looking after my body and wanting to work stronger for longer kind of thing. So, yeah.
So it's just interesting because it never even occurred to me. I knew it was a problem and I just didn't realise that there was anybody out there that could help coach you how to look after yourself better on site from a physical point of view. And you've always heard people saying, lift with your legs and all of this sort of stuff, which most people don't pay any attention to. But how did the business get started? Like, tell us the sort of history of how you started the on-site coach, because most small businesses start from just an idea. So you obviously had the idea and you went out and approached people, I guess. How did it all get started?
Yeah, look, it's a pretty interesting story. I had I've been run my own gym for the past 10 years, and one of the guys who was a mortician, who was actually one of my coaches, said, could I come in and do a workshop around appropriate lifting for his morticians? So yeah, it kind of, if you've ever worked with that kind of people, morticians have probably the most driest, morbid sense of humour. And it brought new meaning to the word deadlift. So yeah, it was a bit of it was something that I fell into just from working with that group, and then a bunch of tyre fitters wanted to get some work and just see if their environment was safe enough for them to work in. Could we change some things, make it a little bit safer for them to operate daily? And it just kind of snowballed from there to like teaching people really appropriate methods and just real world lifting methods, rather than, like you say, bend your knees, keep your back flat, all that stuff that makes sense. But if you don't have the body awareness, which a lot of people don't these days, those two phrases don't mean a lot.
What are the different types of industries that you work with? Obviously, the tool shed is focused in on builders and the trades in the building industry, but I'm sure that there must be other areas that you work with. I mean, in my mind, one of the things I thought of when you're lifting bodies, but alive bodies, was nursing and things like that. So what are the spread of different businesses that you speak to, help out?
Look, I mostly work in the mining industry.
Okay.
That's been where there's a lot of uptake. They just needed something a little bit more relevant. They're in, obviously, if they're underground, they're in awkward situations and ducking around objects and around machinery. So it was kind of, the mining industry has been the biggest one. I've been working with cleaners recently, on a lot of power sites as well, just sort of, a lot of shoveling, anywhere where there's shoveling or mopping or reaching, extending, anything that's kind of, it has labour intense kind of work, is mostly who I work with at the moment. But mainly the mining industry is probably the biggest uptake at the moment.
So one of the most common questions I ask pretty much everybody is learning about the most common mistakes. So when you are working with people in the mining industry or any, sort of trades-based type people, they kind of get used to doing things their own way and lifting their own way and all of that sort of stuff. And it's bizarre how some people go, I've got this sore back and, I'm just unlucky.
Yeah.
What are some of the really common things that you see that we could probably just identify and stop doing?
Like in terms of injury?
Well, the way that people do things, like what are the mistakes that people tend to make that you have to correct in your training?
Oh man, this is a big one for me. I'm really aware that the next generation of people coming through don't have a lot of body awareness. So, and I say that I'm not trying to be mean, but I feel the experience that a lot of young people have had, and I mean real world experience, like swinging a hammer, using a shovel, climbing a bloody ladder, anything that's sort of like it's almost it's like taboo. They don't really understand how this operates. I realise I'm sounding very old as I say this, but I find it's a real struggle for people. So for me, training would have to be like training new staff would have to be one of the top things that I talk to people about. And it's assumed that something like manual handling, it's a no-brainer, right? Just pick that thing up and don't hurt yourself. Like, it sounds really simple, but I just find the amount of awareness people have with how their body moves and the mechanics is just something that I don't see a lot of anymore. And businesses assume that you would know how to do these simple tasks. And I just find that that's one of the things that I end up speaking to a lot of businesses about. Like, don't assume that people know how to use your equipment or pick it up or do even the simplest of tasks. Like, everything has to be spelled out really clear. And we've got a little bit of a way that we train. And I often say, hear one, do one, or see one, hear one, do one, be one. So that way, if you are teaching a new person, they are reaching across all learning possibilities. Like, if you're not a kinesthetic learner or you're not an auditory visual learner, like, you've got to try and hit that person where they're going to learn the best. So I do find that training new staff is probably one of the biggest things I end up talking to a lot of companies about lately. Yeah.
How do you develop body awareness? Because I know exactly what you're talking about, but it's I've been going to a chiropractor just for general health for probably, I don't know, 15 years. I go every week, and I've done a whole lot of moving rocks and what have you around the property, landscaping and what have you, and I just never ever injure my back. I just never do. And I think that a lot of that is because I'm staying in good condition from the chiropractic. But there's little
100%.
exercises, for instance, that he got me to do one time when I had some nerve damage, and it was triggering deep inner core, and the body awareness that you had to have, because I'm doing exactly what he said. I thought I was doing exactly what he said I was meant to do, and he go, no, it's like this, and don't lift your back up like that, blah, blah, blah. And so to get that real intimate body awareness is quite challenging. But just basic stuff, how do you get people to learn body awareness? I mean, how do you do that? Sounds really challenging.
Look, one of those things, for what we do, it's more about positioning. So where you position your body in terms of how you're about to lift an object, or are you breathing correctly before you're about to lift? Are you bracing your midline or bracing your core? So teaching that stuff doesn't come natural to some people, but it is those little tricks. And I think with body awareness, it's a little bit more of you've got to understand your body a little bit more, like the way it moves, the way it works, what muscles you're feeling when you're doing this, or when you're pulling that, or when you're carrying something on your shoulders.
So what are some of the basic, I don't know whether I can call them exercises or maybe just suggestions that you tend to have to make when you're doing the workshop? We've got people standing around in the semicircle and a 20-litre drum of something or whatever you're using to practice to lift. What are the basics that you help people to get right?
Look, I think one of the biggest thing that we teach, and it's a little bit foreign to some people, is basically one is how to hinge. So like getting people to understand how hinging works rather than bending. We try and keep bend out of our language because it sort of has that connotation that when you think bend and flex, and we want to get people to use their sort of hinging mechanisms in their hips. So kind of getting people to use their hips and hinge is probably one of the first things that we teach. And it's a little bit like if you've ever seen Homer Simpson and he uses this tipping bird or drinking bird in the power plant.
I had one of those when I was a boy.
yeah, very entertaining, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of teach people to use their hips as their biggest mover in terms of a mechanical advantage of lifting. And then from there, it's just really teaching people how to breathe and brace. So a little bit like what your chiropractor or your physio would teach in terms of, sort of activating your core, so to speak. That's kind of what we teach from a powerlifting perspective, is like, the first thing you see a power lifter or an Olympic lifter do prior to lifting weight off the ground is they take that big breath of air and try and get their core braced so that mechanically they can use those legs to lift that weight off the ground. So I think what we teach is very different in that, rather than just doing the added bend your knees, keep your back straight, is that we're actually teaching a little bit more of the mechanical advantages of how you can have that really situational awareness when you are picking up any sort of object.
And well, you say any sort of object, because I've had people just pick up really, really light things, or seen people pick up really light things, and just the way that they've twisted and what have you and picked it up, and they've been almost bedridden after it. So what are the things we need to work out, or are there other things we need to do to keep ourselves in good nick? I mean, it makes sense that if you lift something heavy wrong, you can damage yourself. But how do we keep ourselves in good nick so when we're just living and we're lifting up a vase of flowers or something like that, or we turn that way and lift something up, that we don't end up flat on our back?
Yeah. I don't ever teach about the weight. I think we established years ago that it's never the weight that actually does the damage, that it actually is the method. So really, if you can teach people like you said, if you're looking after your body, you're gonna live a lot longer and have a much better quality of life. So, um, to me, lifting is life. You don't have there's nothing you can escape from that doesn't require lifting. Like you're
Yes.
forever lifting stuff. And I mean, in the gym, we used to watch, guys, lifting their 200 kilo deads, and then they drop their keys in the car park, and that's where the injury would occur. So it, it's like it's always the light stuff that you're going to find is the injury. It's because you don't think about it. You think it's light. You're not really concentrating. You bend your back as you go to lift rather than hinging to pick it up. And it's not a bad thing. I mean, your body is designed to bend and flex, but it's when it is under load or it's under stress or your body's tight, that you will find that that's when people get the injuries. So, I mean, looking after your body, having a great exercise program and also a great recovery program, I would say is quite key. So whether you move or whether you don't move, your body needs some kind of recovery. I mean,
Yeah.
most of the time people will get up out of their chair because they've sat for too long and then they'll have a back injury. But it was like you say before, like you do a lot of work around the house, picking things up and moving things. And I mean, the old saying goes, you move it or you lose it. And mate, I'm a big advocate of that. You got to keep moving.
Yeah. Are there other things that we can do that will contribute to our ability to prevent injury? Like where does stretching, for instance, come into it,
Sure.
if at all?
I'm not the biggest fan of stretching. I mean, I think it's great, and I do have a little bit of a stretch program myself. But I try and kind of use the word mobility in terms of
Yeah.
being able to move through ranges of motion rather than just stretching that body part. So um, at most of our seminars, we'll take in a bunch of. I'm giving you all my secrets now, Mick. Um, I'll take in a just a simple lacrosse ball, like a hard bouncy ball, and I mean if you're in steel cap boots all day or you're in gum boots, your ankles are losing a lot of that dorsiflexion, so that ability for the ankle to move is starting to get lost because it's not moving. It's just sedentary. So I'll often take the ball in and I'll start with people's feet. I'll get them to take their shoes off, and most of them don't like to do that. But once they do, I mean, who likes a foot massage? There's not a lot of people that are down with it. I personally love it. I'll put my
I
hand up
love
for a
it.
foot massage. But some people
Great.
are pretty particular about feet, right? So when I go into these seminars, I give out these balls, and I just start with the feet and just rolling out those areas of the foot arch where they can kind of feel that are tight and they haven't been moved or touched for a while. And like simple things like that can just make a massive difference to your mobility because everything's connected. So, I mean, in answering your question, what can we do? Is you've just got to really take care of your body. So if you feel some niggles, whether it's in the hips or the legs or the back, like sort it out before it gets worse and becomes, a known injury.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I remember for many, many moons, but my naturopath moved away to Queensland and I haven't been able to replace him. But, he would always talk about referred pain and things like that. So, if your arm hurt, it might have been your ankle that's causing it or something like that. And I just wonder, like with just those simple things like with your feet, is that something that you could do at home, like sitting on the lounge, for instance, when you're watching TV, is to roll something under your feet just to get them moving? I know that a couple of years ago, Julie and I went on a cruise and went and watched this bloody this presentation about orthotics. And it's just these really simple orthotics. I still wear them today, and they've basically got an arch in sort of four quadrants, so it replicates walking across uneven ground, because they were saying that it's really bad for you when your feet are on paths and flat floors and all of that all of the time. And I just wonder how important it is to get your feet and your ankles and everything moving that are going to contribute to everything a bit higher up.
Yeah. Well, what do they say? It's like the 2% of your body that holds the other percentage of your body up. Like it's crazy. Like your feet are get copping a beating every day, and we shove them in shoes, and we just plod around on work sites, and then come home, we put our feet up, and then that's pretty much it. So yeah, like those, you can use a tennis ball. Grab a tennis ball, sit it under your foot, just give it a nice little roll, put some pressure in some hot spots, and just get that ankle and the fascia in the bottom of your feet to move. It makes a massive difference, and it feels great. I love it.
Yeah. I noticed that I was scrolling through your website, and there was a photo of you with a bunch of guys sitting on the ground and it looked like rolling their hip flexors or something on a pipe, which, I've done that, particularly on the front of the thighs on a roller, and it's absolute agony.
It is.
What was the exercise you were doing with those guys?
Look, so that was, it depends who it was, but I'm presuming it was one of the underground mining crews. And, they're walking around in heavy boots in the mud. Their legs are just getting sore constantly. And like you say, it does hurt if you haven't done it for a while, or you haven't done any kind of recovery on your legs or had a massage. It is going to hurt. So that was just a bunch of guys. I mean, their glutes and their quads get really tight. And I mean, if those muscle groups are tight, eventually that starts to pull you back out. Like you'll compensate somewhere, and the softest part is usually around the midline. So you're gonna need to sort your legs out. Otherwise, it does start to pull your lower back out. Like all of this stuff was just treatment that we kind of used as powerlifters and Olympic lifters in the gym. So foam rolling or myofascial release, it's nothing new. But I think it was just sort of limited to athletes. And I think everyday Joe Blow, because we all end up with tight legs, could use these techniques just to kind of get them moving each day, or just to give themselves a little bit of recovery in the afternoon. Like it's not something you need to spend hours on. Like it's something you can do in 2 minutes.
Yeah. You've mentioned recovery a lot, and I was watching just like a Facebook post by a friend of mine the other day, and he'd just done some sort of workout or whatever, and said, I used to be able to just start, but I just realised that I need to prepare, I need to warm up and things like that.
Longer to warm up.
Yeah. So, we used to be able to get away with it, but the older you get, the more you've got to prepare. So, is there things that you recommend in relation to preparation at the start of the day? I mean, I've seen some huge organisations where they've got 200 people all standing out in a row, and they're all moving, twisting and whatever you at the start of the day as a group. How important is that? Particularly if you're in some sort of physical job to do some preparation.
Yeah, look, I often get people ask me, like I run some stretching and recovery sessions for a scaffolding industry once a week. And I mean, I think to answer that question, the one that works is the one that you're going to do, right?
Yeah.
So if there's not much buy-in from the staff and any personal accountability to take care of your body, it sounds harsh, but none of that stuff's going to work.
That's right.
In saying that, though, if you can get buy-in in allowing these people, like something as simple as giving someone a ball and saying, this is your body, you go take care of it, then I think that's something that's going to work, because no one wants an injury. No one wants to actually feel the pain of, a lower back bulge disc, any of that stuff, it's not just going to be hazardous to you and your job, but it's going to affect your family as well. So I really believe the programs that work, and I'm not slagging on anyone that does these things, but the program that works is the one that the person can take away individually and have that personal accountability to look after their own body.
Mm. Yeah, there's nothing more important than buy-in. And like I said in the introduction, that the impact that constant pain, like there's instant pain that doesn't last very long, someone's dropped something on their foot or something. But when you're living with pain constantly, whether it be lower back pain, which is probably the most common one, it's got to affect you emotionally as well as just physically, your enjoyment and all of that sort of stuff. So what have you found with the businesses that you've worked with, if they've mentioned anything to you or you've been able to identify it yourself, as far as the morale, if you like how people are enjoying their work experience when they are doing some recovery, when they're doing some preparation, and when they're doing some prevention by, learning the proper techniques that you're talking about with hinging and what have you. What have you noticed that how does that affect teams' morale, if you like?
Look, I have to say, with the way that we train people, like, we don't just teach people how to breathe and brace and hinge. Like, we make sure that they can recognize it in their teammates as well. So I think the thing that we try and do a little bit differently is just make sure that people have that ability to be able to say, hey, mate, stop. You're going to cause yourself an injury. Especially when there's new people coming through and there's a big high turnover of staff. It's just a good way to get team buy-in, to be able to let everyone know what good and bad movement looks like. So if they can see that, that guy's about to lift that thing or whatever, and it looks like a dog's breakfast, then have that permission to say, hey, bro, let's just stop for a sec. Let's maybe turn this into a 2-person lift, or, let's get a mechanical lift in. I just think it's sort of, if you can teach people to understand why they do something the way they do it, and then be able to show someone else and see it in someone else, there is more buy-in to try and keep the people safe, and keep them, injury free.
Yeah. And it's obviously very, very powerful and impactful in a business. Like I feel that a lot of business owners really don't pay too much attention to this sort of stuff until it's too late. But the costs of having people off on compo and I don't know whatever you even call it these days, but that sort of stuff can be horrendous. So obviously what you're doing has an impact on the profitability of a business and productivity also.
100%. So, I mean, the term is, lost time injury. So a lost time injury is just that minute injury that I'm coming back to work, but at the moment I have a sore back. That kind of stuff is, I think it's something like 22% just in the labour force is related to lower back injuries. And it's like, that's a big cost to a business. I mean, even if that person can do stuff around the yard or, be on light duties, a month of light duties is not a lot of production. There's not a lot going on to actually make money for the company. So it's pretty big. And like you say, I don't think it's been explored enough. I spoke to a guy that does training, and he said the second most training video they need to make is always manual handling. And I think it just goes, we're at this age in society where I think we can do a little bit better than just bend your knees and keep your back flat. I mean, there's enough knowledge that we have and what we know now about how the body moves and even the basics of, human mechanics. we can do so much better than just throw out a video of a kid doing flat back and bent knees.
Yeah. And might that man have been named Luke Canham?
It was Luke.
He's been on the
Luke
podcast
Canham.
twice.
Oh, look at him go. He loves a camera, doesn't he?
He does a fantastic job, and it's just a terrific
Oh,
service.
it's
But I was
unreal
just
what he
thinking,
does.
what was that?
It's unreal what he does. Like, I don't
Yeah,
understand. There's not enough companies that do that, but I think
Mm.
he's starting something really good there.
yeah, it is amazing. Um, I was just thinking that the majority of what we've spoken about, I think today, has been focused on the on site, like the physical activity, lifting things, moving
Yeah.
things around the site or whatever. I'm just wondering how important this is to people that are in an administration role. So they are sitting at a desk. They're not necessarily,
Mm,
involved in physical activity, but they're in one position all of the time. And
don't
I'm just
don't
wondering
start me.
how what you do. Well, start. I've started you. Do your worst. What do you think about it?
All right, so most of the work I do is in the mining industry. I've recently been working with an open cut mine. If you know much about an operator's job, they spend about a minimum, sorry, they spend the maximum part of their day, which is 10 and a half hours,
Mm,
sitting in this little truck.
yeah.
Um, they get opportunity for a half hour break, but the amount of sitting that they do, what that does is it just switches everything off. So if you're
Mm.
sitting for long periods of time, whether it's in a truck or in a chair or on the toilet, for goodness sakes, you're you're going to switch off a lot of those core muscle groups that are required when you do pick something up. So if you are someone that thinks, oh, well, we don't do manual handling, most of our job is sitting down, you're probably more at risk of hurting yourself than the average labourer. I say that very loosely, but it's like we just spoke about before, is that the injury usually comes from picking up something small, right? Or
Mm.
twisting
Yeah.
and turning and you weren't aware of it or ready for it, and that's when the injury happens. So if your body is not moving, you're more likely to be injured. I I went from being a roof tiler and scaffolder, and I was fairly fit back then. I've always worked out. I've always been in a gym, and then I went into a role as a case manager and counsellor, and but the majority of my day was sitting down, drinking coffee, talking to clients. Every time, I was probably about at least twice a month, I would end up with some kind of back pain or tight back because I was not moving the way I was intended to.
Mm.
So I think that the more we become this sedentary generation of people, the more likely we are to have back injuries,
Yeah, absolutely.
particularly lower
Um,
back.
yeah, and that, as you said, that sort of seems to be the most predominant complaint that people have
Yeah.
is the lower back, and we've got to protect it. So this has been absolutely fascinating. I feel it's an absolutely necessary conversation. People need to pay more attention to it. I think what you've just said then opens up the opportunity for a lot more people to be or should be doing something like this, having somebody like yourself in the workplace, getting people moving, even if you're sitting behind the desk and punching on a computer all day, as you said, probably even more at risk. So what's the best way for people to find you, reach out to you, have a conversation with you, find out whether you can help them or not?
Yeah. Look, we're on all social media. We're on LinkedIn. If you go onto Instagram, Facebook, just go to the on-site coach, or just jump on the website, email me. set up a phone call. You can have a 15-minute conversation just to see where your business is at and see how we can help you guys. But yeah, just reach out. Basically, pick up a phone, pick up a device, and I'm good for a chat.
Yeah, perfect. We will make sure that we've got the email and the website link and so forth in the description. So anybody that wants to reach out and have that chat, you'll be able to go into the description and find all of the appropriate links there. And, if you are a business owner, I just think it's craziness not to get into some prevention and preparation with your team and sort of make it a cultural thing. It's
100%.
It needs to be, as you said, you need the team to buy in. So you need to figure out how we make this a cultural thing, how we make it fun, how we make it enjoyable, how we make it important enough for me to look after the person next to me as well. So, we're constantly looking after each other and making sure we're doing the right thing. But absolute pleasure having a chat with you. Love everything that you're doing. Love how you're contributing to the industry and in this space that, you are preventing a lot of unnecessary pain. And that's one of the drivers for me to be in Builders Business Black Belt is there's so much unnecessary pain in the building industry, whether it be emotional pain, financial pain, and today we're talking about physical pain. There are solutions. We need to use them.
Yeah, 100%.
So thank you very much for joining us and sharing your knowledge and your expertise. It's been wonderful. So, folks, please have a look at the links in the description. Reach out to the on-site coach on any of the social media or click any of the links in the description and reach out and have a conversation with Guy. I love talking about this stuff, love finding people like Guy who are committed and passionate to being able to contribute to the betterment of the industry. That's what we're all here for. So reach out and use those resources and see how they can help your business become more effective, affect the longevity and the profitability of your business also. It's great when we find these hidden gems, probably only hidden to me because I only found out about Guy a couple of weeks ago. I think it might have been through Luke as well, so...
Yep.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Guy, and thanks everybody for listening to another episode of The Tool Shed. We'll be back with another episode before you know it. I'm Mick Hawes from Builders Business Black Belt. That is all. I'm out. Bye for now. And